Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be diving into Bitcoin,
Okay.
but through a really interesting lens. We're looking at it through the experience of someone who has gone all in on Bitcoin
Right.
and now is living a life
Okay.
that has been completely transformed by it.
Interesting.
So you sent over this interview, and I'm really curious to unpack this together.
Yeah, me too. I think
Yeah.
it's easy to talk about Bitcoin in theory, but this is like getting to see how Bitcoin can actually reshape your values,
Yeah.
like your lifestyle,
Right.
even your perception of time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So to set the stage for our listeners, this isn't just like another Bitcoin podcast episode where we're going to run through the basic concepts. This is a deep dive into a personal journey through Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So what are some of the big things that we're going to be looking at today?
Well, from what I've seen, we're going to be unpacking the definition of ownership in a digital age,
Okay.
the emotional shift from traditional investing to fully embracing Bitcoin, and then how the pursuit of profit can actually transform into this deeper appreciation for long-term value.
So not your typical number go up Bitcoin conversation.
Not at all.
Okay.
We're also going to uncover this unexpected connection between Bitcoin, personal freedom, and even watering your grass.
Watering your grass. All right, you have my attention.
Yeah.
So let's jump into the interview.
Okay.
I know that the person we're talking about today initially approached Bitcoin, as many do, as a way to make money.
Right.
And they even talk about having that classic experience of buying at 3,000, selling at 6,000,
Yep.
and then watching it go to 20,000.
Oh, yeah.
And like that feeling of, I missed out.
Totally. And that fear of missing out, or FOMO as it's known, is a common experience for new investors and seasoned investors alike. But what's interesting is how this experience served as like a stepping stone to a much deeper exploration of ownership for the interviewee.
Yeah, because this is where it gets really interesting, right? They talk about being kicked out of their bank for just mentioning Bitcoin.
I know, right?
That seems extreme.
It's a stark example of how even with assets that we believe we own, there can be this disconnect between perception and reality.
Right.
And that was a turning point for the interviewee that really prompted them to question what true ownership actually means.
So they had property, they had investments, all these traditional markers of ownership. How did they reconcile that with this new perspective that they were getting?
Well, they started to see those traditional assets differently. So take real estate, for instance.
Okay.
They argue that property taxes upkeep dealing with tenants. These are all forms of ongoing costs.
Right.
They saw it as almost like renting from the government in a way, which challenged their previous understanding of ownership.
And of course, their experience with the bank just solidified that distrust of these institutions that might be controlling their assets.
Exactly. And that's where I think the allure of Bitcoin becomes really clear. It's not just about potential profit. It's the promise of true ownership
Yeah.
and control over your assets.
So instead of sticking with those traditional investments, they decided to go all in on Bitcoin. Was that purely a financial decision?
Well, it was definitely fueled by this like growing distrust of the traditional financial system,
Sure.
but it also ran deeper. The interviewee realized that all of their assets, even real estate, were essentially priced in a depreciating currency, the US dollar.
Right.
It's like a slow leak in a boat. You might not notice it at first, but eventually
Sink it in. Exactly.
they saw their wealth eroding in real time thanks to inflation.
Exactly. And Bitcoin, in their eyes, became this way to preserve their wealth, to store the value they created in something that they believe was immune to that constant erosion.
So it's almost like they were looking for a life raft, and Bitcoin felt like that answer.
Yeah.
So they dove head first into Bitcoin, but their initial approach of buying and selling eventually shifted to a long-term hold strategy.
Right.
What caused that change? Well, they were influenced by prominent figures in the Bitcoin space, particularly Naval Ravikant, who's an investor known for his unique perspective on wealth.
Ravikant really emphasizes this idea of low time preference,
Okay.
which, in simple terms means just prioritizing long-term value over these short-term gains.
Okay.
It's about like thinking generations ahead.
So instead of constantly chasing the next trade,
Mm-hmm.
they kind of shifted their mindset to focus on this more long-term building of wealth and security.
That's right. And they actually talk about how this completely changed their relationship with time.
Oh, wow.
And even something as, mundane as watering their grass became really profound.
Okay, I gotta admit, I'm a little lost on the whole grass watering thing.
Hmm.
How does that tie into Bitcoin and financial freedom?
Well, it's a really great illustration of this new freedom that they found.
True.
They describe how they used to be glued to their computer screen, right?
Yeah.
Just driven by this like anxiety of making money.
Sure.
But by embracing Bitcoin and this long-term outlook, it allowed them to break free from that constant pressure.
They
Yeah.
could relax, enjoy simple pleasures like tending to their lawn, you know,
Yeah.
without that like nagging feeling of needing to chase the next opportunity.
It's amazing how something so simple can kind of take on such a significant meaning, right? It becomes
Yeah.
a symbol of like, I'm liberated from that daily grind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about the numbers in their bank account anymore. It was about how this new approach to wealth, fueled by Bitcoin, gave them the mental space
Yeah.
and the actual time to focus on what really mattered.
It sounds like they went from feeling controlled by money to being in control of their own time and energy.
You got it. And that's where things take an even more interesting turn.
Okay.
Their journey kind of evolves from this personal exploration of wealth to something much bigger.
Okay.
They start to see Bitcoin as a potential catalyst for positive social change.
So their perspective broadens beyond their own financial well-being to consider the implications of a decentralized system like this.
Exactly. They talk about how the traditional financial system
Huh.
can feel rigged against the individual, especially after their experience with the bank.
Which, let's be honest, that's a pretty jarring example of how that centralized power can be used against somebody for just exploring an alternative.
For sure.
Yeah.
And that's where they see Bitcoin's true potential, you know,
Okay.
empowering individuals, giving them control over their own finances, and offering an alternative to institutions that they might not trust.
Right.
They really believe that Bitcoin can be this tool for creating a fairer and more equitable world.
It's like they're saying, like, don't just take our word for it, educate yourself. They learned by going deep into Bitcoin, and they think other people can do the same thing.
That's right. They emphasize the importance of not blindly trusting traditional financial institutions
Right.
and seeking out diverse perspectives.
Yeah, it really resonates with this podcast encouraging critical thinking and exploration, but like they didn't just stumble on this knowledge, right? They were actively seeking it out.
Oh, yeah. They talk about the power of online communities, podcasts,
Yeah.
even social media for finding alternative sources of information and connecting with others who are like challenging the status quo.
So we've talked about this shift in mindset, this idea of Bitcoin being more than just money, even a tool for social change. But I'm curious, how did that actually play out in their life?
Yeah, so it's not like they suddenly quit their job and bought a one-way ticket to a tropical island to live off their Bitcoin.
Right.
As tempting as that sounds,
Mm-hmm.
their takeaway was much more nuanced than that.
Okay.
They really stressed that financial freedom, whether it's achieved through Bitcoin or any other avenue, shouldn't mean like disengaging from society.
So it's not about checking out completely, but rather having that freedom to choose how you contribute.
Exactly. They found that that financial security they built in part through Bitcoin gave them the freedom to focus on work that they found genuinely fulfilling,
Okay.
not just work that brought in a paycheck.
Right.
Their motivation shifted from necessity to passion.
Which I think resonates with a lot of people. Not everybody loves their 9 to 5.
Absolutely. And that's where their story kind of circles back to this broader impact of Bitcoin.
Okay.
They believe that as more individuals achieve financial freedom, they'll have this space to pursue their passions,
Yeah.
contribute their talents more fully,
Right.
and ultimately create this more vibrant and diverse society.
It's like a ripple effect.
Exactly.
Individual empowerment leading to positive social change. But it's important to remember this is just one person's experience.
Right.
Their unique perspective on Bitcoin and its potential.
And they acknowledge that too.
Yeah.
You know, they emphasize that their path is not a blueprint for everyone,
Right.
and that listeners should be wary of anyone claiming to have all the answers
Of course.
when it comes to Bitcoin or finance in general.
So instead of offering a one-size-fits-all solution, it's more about advocating for continued learning and exploration.
Yes, they stress the importance of staying curious, constantly questioning, and being open to new information and evolving perspectives.
Right.
Dogma has no place in this space.
So it's about embracing the unknown and taking responsibility for your own financial education and then making those informed decisions.
Exactly, and that's where I think their story offers a really valuable lesson for all of us.
Yeah.
Regardless of how we feel about Bitcoin,
Right.
it's about recognizing that true wealth encompasses more than just financial assets.
It's about having the freedom to choose how you spend your time.
Yes,
Pursue your passions and contribute to the world in a way that is meaningful to you.
well said. Ultimately, That's the real treasure.
Yeah.
Aligning your life with your values and finding that fulfillment beyond just the numbers on a screen.
Wow. We started with Bitcoin, but we ended up exploring these really profound ideas about ownership and freedom and this pursuit of a meaningful life.
Yeah.
This deep dive really broadened my perspective.
It's amazing how a single interview can spark such thought-provoking conversations.
It really is.
That's the power of diving deep, uncovering those hidden connections, challenging our assumptions, and realizing there's always more to learn.
And maybe, just maybe, this conversation will inspire our listeners to do a little deep diving of their own,
I hope so.
to question what truly matters to them, explore new possibilities, and maybe even water their grass a little more mindfully.
Because sometimes the most profound insights are found not in the grand pronouncements, but in the simple act of slowing down,
Yeah.
appreciating the present and connecting with what truly brings us joy.
Beautifully said. And on that note, we'll leave you with this final thought. What if true wealth isn't about how much you accumulate, but how much freedom you create in your life? Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.